Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've just been to see Nuremberg. It's a psychological, historical drama, becomes a courtroom film in its latter parts, written and directed by James Vanderbilt, which is not a name that will be familiar to a lot of people, wasn't to me, but you look up his credits, he's written a lot.
Yes.
So he wrote Zodiac, which was great. He wrote White House Down, The Amazing Spider-Man. He's produced a lot as well. This is not the first film he's directed, though.
Oh.
It is. He directed a film called Truth in 2015.
Right.
Which I don't know anything about. But this is his second. And it's based on the Nuremberg trials. In particular, it's based on a book called The Nazi and the Psychiatrist by a journalist called Jack L. High, which is about a real guy, a US Army psychiatrist called Douglas Kelly, played here by Rami Malek, whose job it was to assess the Nazi high command who were in custody to undergo the Nuremberg trials. He was supposed to evaluate them, assess them, decide if they were insane, whether they're going to have a breakdown on the stand. He ended up, in real life, taking his experiences, writing a book, which apparently was very little read, we're told by the film eventually. Later on, towards the end of the 50s, he committed suicide. So he ended up kind of having a very unhappy life because no one really listened to him. He fell into kind of depression and alcoholism, we're told. But during this, we see him at the start kind of quite happy-go-lucky. I mean, he as soon as he meets Hermann Göring, who is the big one, who's played by Russell Crowe here, who was Hitler's second in command, and after Hitler's death became the face of the Nazi party. He's a big fish. He's energized. I want to meet more of them. I've got to see them. And I suppose one of the problems that I had with the film early on is that, although maybe it's not a problem in retrospect, it really makes a star of Göring. I mean, it has a star actor in that role, yes, and he has personality and presence and everything that Russell Crowe brings.
Russell Crowe is great.
And then I guess maybe the point, ultimately, is that there is such a thing as the allure and the seductive power of people like that. And in putting a star in that role, and having a character kind of fall for him, as he does here, the film is kind of playing on that, and it's playing on a warning on that. But it must be said, for a long time I didn't like it. I thought it was a misstep for a long time.
Oh no, I liked that casting. I think it's necessary casting, and it's by far the best thing about the film.
Yeah.
All around. So I mean, I think it's a mediocre film about a very important and very timely subject. And it's really only saved by the actors. I mean, I was surprised now, just looking at the Wikipedia page, to see how long it was, because it actually didn't feel that long to me.
Oh, it felt very long to me.
Ah, right, okay. It didn't to me.
A little over 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, 2 hours and 25 minutes. I mean, quite a bit over.
Sorry, yeah, quite right. Yeah.
So it didn't feel that long to me. And I think it's because almost all the actors, except Malek, I thought were wonderful. And Russell Crowe, tremendous, right? I mean, I think it's kind of, one of his greatest performances. He makes him charming. He makes the performance itself kind of an attraction. Yeah, he makes you laugh. He's sly. He's meant to be a star. There has to be a reason why people are drawn to men like that, right? He has to be like super charismatic. It's something that's not required of the others. Yeah. Right.
And of course, there's an element of a reveal later on, maybe a spoiler, who knows, that it is within the film. It is kind of the performance too. Yeah. Just as Rami Malek is ultimately tasked with spying on him for the government, revealing what he knows, breaking doctor-patient confidentiality, and telling the authorities who are going to try the case what he knows. We also find out that it is established, it is revealed that Göring has been kind of not spying on him, but has been lying to him, playing a part. We're not friends, that kind of thing. Which I guess you kind of always sort of know, but it comes out in one particular scene.
I think the film is misstructured, and I think part of the problem with the film, as far as I see it, is that the whole Rami Malek character is extraneous. You could have done the same film, and probably much more efficiently, by having a Michael Shannon versus Russell Crowe kind of
Yeah, Michael Shannon here plays the prosecutor.
Exactly.
The
So
Supreme Court Justice.
if you make it about the prosecutor, trying to make the case, and Göring trying to evade it, and then you can have all these other people as supporting bits, right? But the problem is that the central character is Malek, and he's no good. He misses all his big moments. He's overly neurotic, kind of. You don't know what's in it really for him. He's like kind of a blank with neuroses, which is a real problem. And he really stands out, and he's someone I like, right? But I think he really stands out in relation to all the other people, which really hit their marks each time. And I want to praise them all because I thought Colin Hanks was wonderful, right? As, kind of that weaselly, on the make kind of not too bright soldier. And John Slattery was authoritative, and fantastic. And Leo Woodall, he killed all his big moments, really. Yeah, I thought
he's the translator.
Yeah, he's a translator. And, that moment of self-revelation, which I won't spoil, that comes at the end. Yeah, I mean, he's just marvelous.
I like that scene becomes something. When it starts, I think, oh, here's a cliche coming, and here's a long bit of thing, and I thought it started very slowly, but once it develops emotionally, he really sells.
Yeah, well, you weren't wrong. I mean, it was a total cliche. Yeah, the only thing that made it come alive really was Woodall.
Yeah,
really.
Well, that's what I mean. So when that develops and he starts to really kill it, it's great.
So,
well, I know what you mean about the Rami Malek character being sort of extraneous, because I remember Roy Wood Jr., who's an American comedian, for a couple of years did a roundup of the Oscar Best Pictures from the perspective of someone who hadn't really seen them or wasn't that interested, and he did one of Green Book. Remember that film?
Oh yes.
And his summation of it was, you've got one of the greatest black classical musicians of all time, and you make a film about his racist Uber driver. And it's like the same sort of thing here. It's like, this is a big story about two particularly big characters who end up coming together in the prosecution scene in the trial at the end, the Michael Shannon one that you're talking about. But Michael Shannon is the side character.
Yes,
and
where he really should be central, and he's got all the authority and the charisma and the intelligence, to have really taken the lead in this. Really,
and it sort of seems it felt early on that it would have been more even-handed, the split between Shannon and Malek's characters.
Yes.
It felt like it was going to be a little more even, but then it really just becomes Malek, and Shannon comes back in later on. You think, and what a presence! Do you feel like you've missed him so much? Because I mean, he's such a presence on screen, Michael Shannon. I love him, and he really fits him. And everything you're saying about the casting is correct. I agree with you.
It damages the film because also I think the film ends about 15 minutes later than it needs to, because it feels it's got to wrap up all the pieces around the Malek character.
Yeah.
Right? Which are completely unnecessary. Nobody cares about. And the film has given you no reason to care about him. Right? Like, you don't know anything about him.
No.
You don't know if he's got a partner or children, or if he's married, or what his family's like back in the States, or whether he's gay, whatever. You don't know anything about him at all, except that he's a psychiatrist, right? And who's got ambitions to make something of his life. So the film doesn't give you grounds to care for him the way that it does, I think, with Leo Woodall, with Shannon. I mean, even Richard E. Grant, he really has very few moments, but he's wonderful in all of them, really. And he's someone I normally don't like very much, right? So it's a weird film because there is that problem with the structure, a hole in its center, and it kind of, for me, all of the power in the film comes from the concentration camp footage.
Yeah, so I was going to say this. When you said the best thing about the film was the casting, first thing, when it was happening in the film, I thought the moment that they show the documentary footage, the real footage of various concentration camps in the trial, and it's it's set up as this will give us an explanation of what the term concentration camp means in this context. It's extended, that scene, and it's intercut with reactions of characters responding to it, crying, looking away, being transfixed. And that is incredibly powerful. And to me, it doesn't feel manipulative. It felt necessary.
Okay. So I'm torn because I think it is manipulative. And actually, there should be, I don't know, more of an ethical consideration about how and when you show that stuff, right? Like, I mean, I think you show that, and it's like throwing a children on a bus or something. You can't help but cry, really. You know, it's like, you know, that footage is doing all of the film's work for it.
It is.
On the other hand, we live in a moment where there are so many Holocaust deniers and so on, that I feel less queasy about inserting that into a narrative film than I would have felt.
I think it's justified contextually. It's also justified in terms of story, because one thing that I think feels completely missing for so much of the film is the understanding of the seriousness of what these people did and what they were in charge of, what Göring in particular was in charge of, what he denies knowledge of. And when you finally see it, and it's as awful as it is, and we see footage that I've never seen before. I mean, there's so much footage, but you know, a bulldozer bulldozing bodies. You know, the such thin, emaciated people who are still alive and being held up by the people who come to rescue them. You know, you've seen some of this before. This individual footage I hadn't seen, but you know, you're kind of familiar with the general sort of sense of what this footage is, but still, it's like it's one thing to remember it, and it's another to see it. So when you do finally see it, the fact that this has been absent throughout the film it's a real shock to the system, and then it's a shock to Rami Malek's character, who comes in and confronts Göring about it. You know, and that's supposed to be the kind of big explosive scene that I guess you're saying kind of he misses the mark on, but that's what that's supposed to be. Like, I mean, that shot where, you know, notice how that scene began. So that we finish seeing the concentration camp footage, and Rami Malek goes into Göring's cell, and we see it kind of straight on from outside, and he slams the door, and then we cut to inside the cell from just the other side of the door, and the camera's doing this just slightly shaky thing, like we're in a handheld mode here, where, you know, things are unstable, the emotions are unstable, right? He's going to confront him. Kind of that's a subtlety that really worked for me. But like, that's super necessary, right? It had to happen, and it had been missing throughout the film, and I suppose it's partly justified. Its absence, it's partly justified by the fact that I don't know to what extent these things, how much this was known or was accepted, and we would have characters talk about having kind of heard about the Holocaust. I don't know to what degree it's supposed. I don't know to what degree in real life it was established as fact, and you know the kind of the scale and sense of the atrocities was established. Maybe it was the Nuremberg trials that really did establish that.
I understand that Germans were forced to watch it.
Right.
This footage, that kind of, it was obligatory.
But the Allied countries, you know, what did we know? I mean, I don't know. I genuinely, this is a question that I have. And so is it therefore justified that if the characters wouldn't have known that?
I mean, it was known. I mean, I remember reading just about Lubitsch kind of rounding up money to kind of, to get people to escape because they knew that it was so awful. Now, did he know about, gas chambers? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Right. But I do think, I mean, who knew what when is always unknowable in a way.
Well, what I'm saying
I can't imagine governments didn't know.
Well, all I'm saying is that's the context that kind of built into the film around the reveal of this footage and the emotional impact that it has, which I think makes sense, at least within the context of the film. As to whether it's historically justified or not, I don't know quite so much.
Well,
but to me, like, it's clearly one of the projects of the film is to educate, right? I mean, not only through that, but you also have like every Nazi who is introduced with the kind of CV is laid out in front of you. Second in command, he did this, he was in charge of this, he started off the thing. Like, the other characters would sort of know some of this at least, like, but it's given there for the audience, and then a joke is made of it, admittedly, and I think the film actually does have decent jokes in it, which is kind of interesting for a film that is also so heavy.
Yes.
So Rami Malek is told, he said, "You're going to meet Göring. Oh, let's go meet him now." He goes, "You're not intimidated? Of course not." And then he lists out everything that Göring is in charge of. And then he goes, "Okay, I'm intimidated now." So those jokes kind of work.
So I don't know where you're going. So the jokes work, but there's concentration camp footage.
No.
Right,
So the joke thing was a bit of a tangent. What I'm saying is that clearly it's in the film's project to educate an audience.
Well, I think it's more to educate. It's to make us see parallels with Israel now, right, and also with the U.S. now, right. So I think kind of those are the parallels that it's making.
Particularly the US, because it does have this thing about...
Oh, no, I think particularly Israel.
Well, I think what I'm going to say is explicitly the US, because you have characters, particularly towards the end, you know, when the Rami Malek character appears on the radio talking about, you know, these people are human, right? That's the thing, is these people, they're not special, they're not particularly evil, they are human beings, and this can happen everywhere. Every country has these. And they're going, "Well, not the US." He goes, "Yes, the US.
Yes.
And if you don't see it coming, then you're part of the problem," sort of thing.
Well, that's true.
So
but
they're explicit about that particular thing.
Well, but the other thing about, you know, war crimes and people being held responsible and the setting of precedent for, international law courts that hold these people responsible, I think that the resonance for me is now all with Israel.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
So, but yes, I mean, you know, part of the point that the film is making is this can happen anywhere. In fact, I think, you know, the line is it's because people like you didn't speak that.
That's when the translator tells his story.
Yes,
and the reason this can happen is because people didn't fight back till it was too late.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it has all kinds of resonance. But my God, I think it's such a mediocre film.
It is, and I think it's really simple. I think it's kind of Oscar bait, quite frankly. I find it very dreary. As you say, I think all the focus is in kind of the wrong places. And, you know, for a while I was thinking, I think I kind of hate this. Sort of, if not ideologically, but just in kind of execution. I found bits of it glib and kind of kitsch. I mean, when you're told the story of Rudolf Hess, who was also in the Nuremberg trials. He's kind of the second most important Nazi in the trials. And he's the one who flew across the North Sea and landed in Scotland and insisted on meeting Churchill and setting up UK as an arm of the Third Reich or whatever. And you're told this story, but you're shown it through a kind of mock old movie footage, you know, kind of Technicolor type. The colours are suddenly punched up. It's all sped up, which is not accurate to a real film. You know, it's more accurate to kind of old news footage and that sort of thing. But it just plays as like I know I said that the jokes in the film work, but this plays as too glib, too cheap.
The whole sections with Rudolf Hess were.
I thought this is like really terrible. Misjudged. When you see just for a shot or two in the trial scenes themselves, you get the odd establishing shot of all rise and everyone stands up, and you see this wide shot. And it's done in black and white with a grainy effect to resemble newsreel footage. Again, I didn't like it. Like, all of a sudden, it's just it's playing this little kitschy thing on you for a second. I didn't like it.
It's really banal filmmaking. I realize, by the way, that I have seen the other film that he did. Truth. Okay. Which was with Kate Blanchett and Robert Redford, and again, it was one of those serious films. I forget what it was. You know, it was about some CBS news thing and what to run and how to run it and when to run it and they had attempts to censor it or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was exactly like this, right? It was one of those films that kind of, falls apart under the weight of its own weightiness and seriousness, really. But showed no feel for cinema.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And I think this is what we see here, basically.
I also spent the whole film thinking, what is this actually about? On paper, it seems so obvious. And, I think there are things that are, like I said, that kind of instinct or desire to educate and inform what you're saying about the parallels it's drawing, I think, are there. But really, what is it about? Like, what is it telling you through the filmmaking about, not about the characters, but about the ways we think? Like I said, this is why I kind of went back and forth on the question of the Göring representation. Is the fact that he is seductive and kind of makes good points or makes good jokes and is likable, is that part of a project to show what this kind of person is like and how they can be seductive?
I
or
think,
is it a problem?
No, I think you're meant to see similarities with Trump. With a Trumpian figure. So, I mean, that doesn't puzzle me. The film is very clear in its intent. It wants to show that people can be held accountable for crimes by international courts, and that the truth matters, and that in fact, we do need to remember, because this thing can happen any place at any time. So I mean, it's not an original message, but I think it's a clear message.
I feel the film is more muddled than that, though, despite the fact that I think it is clear about those certain things. It spends a lot of time establishing that the crimes that the Nuremberg trials are there to judge are not established as crimes. This is kind of the origin of war crimes. So like how can one country judge another country? If it was in a German court, we're told it would be one thing, but how can an international court? There's no such thing as an international court at this point. So the idea that these are crimes. I mean, did you feel that the quote unquote victory in court, where they basically Richard E. Grant kind of goads ultimately Göring into professing his loyalty to Hitler? Did that feel like it was sold as a victory? It used the cliches of a court victory. Did it feel like one? I kind of didn't get what the victory was, because from what I could tell the whole way through, Göring always wanted to talk about his love for Hitler, or he was all about Germany is great. We will make it great. We will make it great again. I kind of felt like, what have you got him to admit here? Something that he already...
Well, you've got him to admit that he is responsible. And actually, the whole of that section of the film is building up to the importance of him being held responsible. That's what the whole Leo Woodall character is about, right? So when Malek says, well, I'm leaving, the whole thing is you can't leave because you're the one who knows them best, and they need help because they might not win this case.
I understand that, but when in court, he says what he says, and the victory is centred around this Heil Hitler, I still love Hitler, I'm loyal to Hitler. If I had known, because this whole thing is I didn't know about the Holocaust. If I had known about the Holocaust, then I would still have followed Hitler. And then everyone goes, ooh. And that didn't feel like the great victory.
There's a couple of lines there that you're missing, and they were saying something. So one of the questions was something like, well, would you have changed anything? So the whole line of questioning about Hitler was, would you have done different? Yeah. Right? And there was no. The answer was no. So actually, he is responsible.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like because I think we always sort of knew that. That's what. It didn't. To me, it didn't build up enough of a thing about if he admits it, then that's the key victory, because that's ultimately what it's building to. But it didn't sell it to me at all. I thought, that's it.
I didn't have any problems with that. Yeah. I mean, I had problems with the 15 minutes that followed that added nothing. Actually, I don't think you needed to have seen the people hung. I think you could have ended it once Göring commits suicide. Right? You just assume all the other people are going to be hung. They only show you one anyway. I don't know why they showed you that. Right, and
it's supposed to humiliate him, to emasculate. He breaks down, he cries, he pisses himself.
I know, but the film didn't need that.
No, I know. But I think that's what at least it's trying to do. It's trying to just fully humiliate the Nazis.
Yeah, but it builds up to things that it then doesn't cover. Yeah, because the whole thing is Leo Woodall will say, just before he dies, I'm going to tell him I'm a Jew, and in fact, he helps him put his clothes on, right? So
he has because a little bit of compassion comes over him. But he does the thing. I mean, it sets up all that shite about when you see when he goes, show me a magic trick. He says, I understand you do magic, Göring. He says, teach me a magic trick, and then he teaches him the word abracadabra. And you know that abracadabra is going to come back. It's one of these things like the line won't just live there; it'll come back, and then it'll have a plot.
All films do that.
I know. But I'm saying it's just one of those fucking films. I mean, actually, this really annoyed me right at the start. When Malek is, I guess, on the train to Nuremberg, and he's playing with a deck of cards, and he meets the girl, and he wants to show her a trick, and she's not interested. So he does it the other way around. He says, "Okay, you do a trick to me," and he tells her how to do the trick. So I'll pick a card, I'll put it in the pack, you shuffle it, and then look at the card on top. It was my card, and I'm going, okay, so that's a genuinely unexplainable trick, right? Because she had the cards the whole time, she shuffled them. So surely the point of this is going to be that it's revealed that every card was the three of spades, and it was inevitable, or that he just got really lucky and his card was on top. But in fact, it's just left as, no, he did a really genuinely amazing magic trick, and are we supposed to just read into that? Is he amazing? Is he the wonderful psychologist? What is it? It's a really stupid person's idea of how to tell you that this character is amazing. Well, I also didn't like, he establishes early on when he first meets Göring that Göring can speak English, because he's talking to him in German, he has a translator, but he says something in English that Göring reacts to, and he goes, okay, I know he can understand me, he's playing me. And then a little bit later, when he saves Göring's life from the heart attack, Göring says thank you in English, and that's sold as this thing of, see, he spoke English to me, and like, even a German who doesn't know English knows thank you. Like, are we supposed to?
Come on, Mike! I really hate it.
I thought this was a very stupid person's idea of how to write this stuff.
I think you're fixating on the wrong things. In the scene that you mentioned, right, the whole kind of scene in the train. What I was focusing on was how unconvincing Malek is, because this is meant to be a romantic moment. He's meeting a girl. She's a beautiful girl. He's trying to impress her. And he gives no sexual energy at all, no vibes. He's completely unconvincing as kind of, a heterosexual leading man, right? Yeah. And, I just thought it flops. I mean, for me, that scene was saying, he's somebody who can charm a girl with his magic tricks, except, it's not working for me.
Yeah.
So whether the trick was believable or not, I really didn't care.
I understand that. But to me, it comes down to writing, and it comes down to what the filmmaker expects of the audience. It's either the filmmaker doesn't understand that he's being kind of dumb, or he expects the audience to just buy this shit. So to me, it does matter that this is stupidly written. And these are examples of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's stupidly written. I mean, it is. He's obviously got amazing credits as a writer. Yeah,
the guy who wrote Zodiac wrote this. How's that happen?
Well, the thing is, we never really know about screenplays, do we? It could have had 18 writers, and he got the credit because he wrote one word extra or something. So, the thing is that you never know. But he's got amazing credits. But as a director, he's terrible.
He's not up to very much, and nor is he here.
But I do think it's kind of a very, it's a very timely film, and I think it is worth seeing because Russell Crowe is so great. Yeah, that has to be like, it's a truly great performance. He's sly, he's funny, he's charismatic, he's very loving. Yeah, you could see he makes you feel how much he loves his wife and his child, and he also kind of, makes you understand that he's a narcissist and that. He's quite capable of having done all the things that they said he did, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a very difficult performance to pull off, and he's always watchable, right? Which is not the same for Malek,
What you were saying reminded me of what you were saying about Oscar Isaac in Frankenstein, which is that he's all manners, he's all behaviours, and all kind of fidgets, and like. Despite what I said with the Oscar Isaac character, that being fidgety and stuff works for an active character who with an active mind and everything, I also agree that it's a mannered performance. It's one that's all surface and effects, and that's what's going on here. I think the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, he's a cipher as a character. Like, you don't really know who he is. You don't really know what his motivation is. You really, aside from him wanting to be somebody, you don't really get a sense of...
I mean, his motivation at the start, implicitly, was, these guys are fascinating. I've got to meet them. I've got to find out who... And that was interesting as a motivation, but that kind of goes away. He doesn't just start to get seduced by Göring.
I don't even think that's a motivation. That's a motivation to an action.
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell you anything... It doesn't tell you very much about his character.
No, it doesn't.
Who he is, or where he comes from, or what he hopes for, or, kind of anything about his family or personal life, or nothing. You don't get the sense of a person, in watching the character. Which is a big lack when he is meant to be the center of the film. So
the film reminded me of Bridge of Spies, Spielberg film from about 10 years ago.
I remember Bridge of Spies,
and it really made me. It's funny. I always say this about Spotlight, is that when I watched Concussion, which was the Will Smith film about the Dr. Bennett Omalu, I think his name was, who sort of discovered this great crisis of brain injuries in the NFL, in this kind of specific disease that was caused by NFL players hitting each other in the head. That's the film about the guy uncovering the secret and trying to expose it, that does it by the numbers. That's the way it's supposed to be done. And Spotlight was the film. When I watched that, I realised how good Spotlight was, because it did things differently, and it told you a slightly different story, and it made different people culpable and that sort of thing. And I didn't realise it until I saw the normal film. And this kind of does something similar with Bridge of Spies. Bridge of Spies really understands how to structure scenes and structure a film, but also
Bridge of Spies is a completely different. I didn't like Bridge of Spies because I thought it was dumb and uninformed about the real politic of the era.
Yeah.
Right? And overly rah-rah American. Right? But my God, the filmmaking it's fucking Spielberg, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So it's like on a completely different level than this one.
I mean, in terms of the storytelling, the comparison that I was really thinking about in my head was the kind of first half of Bridge of Spies is building up to the trial, because after that it's about how do we deal with everything after that. And there are questions that the film asks about what is the meaning of this trial, how are we going to play it out, is it a kangaroo court, are we going to get the verdict that everyone expects anyway? And it's constantly finding interesting questions to ask about that, and questions about what the results will be, because, well, if we do this with this spy and we treat him this way, then when we have one on the other side, will they treat him that way? Will they think that that he's given up all these secrets? All these kind of things were really interesting, intricate, delicate questions that the film found ways to ask that constantly changed what you thought should happen. Here, there's none of that. It's just
it ducks all the real problems and questions, because when Göring asks him, so what about dropping an atom bomb? And he goes, "Oh, that's collateral damage." I mean, really?
I remember it's such a good, because that's the point where you're going, fucking hell, Göring made such a good point there, and because it was an indiscriminate killing. And I remember several years ago on the Daily Show when I think maybe the torture memos had come out about Iraq, and Jon Stewart was very, very kind of anti-Iraq and everything. And he had various people on from the administration on his show to talk to him about it. And at one point, talking to one of these people, Hiroshima came up. And he was talking about war crimes. And then this guy said, well, was dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki a war crime? And he thinks about it for a second, and he goes, yeah, I think it was.
Yes.
If you drop the bomb, say, 50 miles offshore on an uninhabited island, and you go, look at this is what we can do now. That's one thing, but to drop it straight on Japan, that's another. And then the next day on the show, he started it by taking that back and saying, of course it wasn't a war crime. Of course it was a complicated time, and I kind of wish I'd taken that back. And it's no, fucking stand by it. You made a good point.
Exactly. I mean, the whole thing is about, the indiscriminate murder of civilians and so on.
Yeah.
Well, kind of what's more indiscriminate than an atom bomb.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we were bombing factories.
So I think they really fudged that moment, and they kind of, something that could have been complex and something to think about and something interesting, they just fudged it completely by having Malek deny it. Really, it's not comparable. Well, actually,
maybe it is.
Yeah, and on some level it is.
And the audience, well, it depends on the audience. Maybe the American audience will be left going, yeah, of course it's not comparable, because they are kind of sort of taught that, well, it was justified, we had to do it, and everyone else is kind of going, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the film should have been I don't know, rather than no. So it's not a very complex film.
I would say that the fact that it brings up that question at all is kind of interesting and slightly impressive. I really wouldn't have thought it would. Also, the fact that
I don't think so.
It goes to the Pope, and he says to the Pope, well, you can't support me in this, but you could support the Nazis. That's quite a bold thing to be doing as well.
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, no. Everybody knows that.
Well, I'm not sure they do. That's the thing. When I say this film is out to educate, I don't think a lot of people know.
Well, I think it's out to educate, but it's out to educate by, it's not uncovering anything new. Those are well-known established facts.
Yeah, but not everyone knows them. They're not, although they're established, they may be not widely known.
Frankly, what Americans know at this moment is a real question. But you can't base kind of making a complex and interesting movie on the basis of what, Americans might know. And actually that they might not know that is not a question. It's not a rationale for making it a less complex kind of issue. you know.
Well, I don't. I'm saying it makes the film slightly more complex to bring that in.
Well, I'm saying it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, if you just bring it up and then you just dismiss it, you might as well not bring it up at all. I mean, if you don't make it a real complicated issue of ethics and conscience and so on, then why bother?
Well, I mean, I sort of agree with that, but the film isn't about that point in particular, and the fact that it mentions it at all, it really didn't need to. They didn't need to go to the Pope and confront him.
I think it did need to, if it wants to make the case that it does. If it wants to say, you know, how America at the moment might be complicit in actions like that, then it does need to.
Yeah, well, it did then.
All right, but it didn't do it very well.
I thought it
which
did
is the point.
I thought it did it enough. It was. I mean, it's quite a concise scene, and like I say, the film isn't about that scene.
Well, so. I think it kind of, you know, it raised the issue and then it was dismissed. So, you know, to me that's not a good way of bringing it.
I understand that, but I think there will be people watching it who go, "I never knew, really," and that in itself has a certain value.
Well, I guess so. I mean, I think what people who see the film will find a value. And now I guess I'm contradicting myself, but I think anybody who hasn't seen that Auschwitz footage, kind of, that is, I think, truly illuminating about man's capacity for evil. You know,
but everyone's got to learn something for the first time at some point, and maybe this is some people's first time.
Sure,
you know.
Well,
I'll give the film
my feeling
leeway
is
on that.
you're not going to have a 7-year-old watching this film, are you?
No, but there are plenty of. I mean, what's it? You know, you get these like polls in the paper that's like, you know, 50% of British kids think that our leads during the war was Hitler.
You know, what kind of an argument are you making that basically films have to be dumb because you know there's people in the audience who won't get
I'm not saying
point.
that films have to be dumb, but I'm saying there's actually some value in saying things that to you and I might be obvious because we have an interest in this sort of thing. A lot of people really don't. Actually, it's not all that bad to sometimes speak to the cheap seats.
Well, I think one should be speaking to the cheap seats at all time, but I also think one shouldn't condescend to the audience in the ways that you're suggesting.
Maybe so.
Anyway, let's wrap this up. I guess we're beating a dead horse. It's like terrible and this, terrible and that, terrible and that.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if it comes up for awards contention because it's clearly asking for it.
Well, I think Russell Crowe, if he doesn't get nominated for something, he'll be robbed, really, because he definitely deserves it.
Yeah, he was good, yeah.
And, you know, to me, he's the major reason to see the film. And I must say that also, with all the dissatisfactions that we spoke of, I wasn't bored. So
I did get bored. And I got kind of angry.
Right.
You know, because like I said, I was thinking, do I hate this? Or do I not? I'm not sure. Couldn't really tell. Because I was sort of thinking, yeah, I do hate this, but I can't really tell you why in a fully justified way, but I just feel it in my bones. And ultimately, I don't feel it in my bones. I come down on the side that you come down, which is this is just pretty mediocre stuff.
Yeah, it is mediocre. It's mediocre stuff with a very serious message.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an unfortunate combination as well.
Actually, one last thing I do want to ask you, because you've seen Judgment at Nuremberg, which is the other kind of big Nuremberg trials film.
Yes.
And one thing, I've never seen it, but you've said to me, like, that is super preachy. How does that compare to this, do you think?
Oh, no, I think, to me, that's much, much better.
Okay.
Yeah, and for all kinds of reasons.
Is it preachier? Yeah. Is this preachy, do you think?
Well, the other... they're both preachy. Judgment at Nuremberg is preachy in a kind of an intelligent middle brow way, right? Whereas I think this is kind of dumb, you know. And also, you know, Judgment at Nuremberg has all these stars and these star turns and, you know, melodrama, and it's all courtroom. It's like a real courtroom drama, right? So I think it's by far the better film. But interesting that one of the issues in both places is, did you know? Right? Marlene Dietrich plays this widow who, you know, swears she didn't know anything about it. Her husband didn't know anything about it. Right? And her husband is one of the people who's on trial. He's a general or something. Or he might be dead by that point. I don't know. But anyway, you know, she is meant to be the German, a civilian representation. So, mind you, I haven't seen it for many years, so it's all muddied. And what I remember, though, are the star turns. It's, you know, Spencer Tracy and Maximilian Schell and Burt Lancaster and Richard Widmark and Montgomery Clift and Judy Garland, they all have their moment, right? You know, so there's a real theatrical dimension around it as well, that you give each of these people their moments.
Yeah.
And they're all big stars, and big stars with a moral purpose and a lesson to teach.
Yeah.
Right, but actually there's a kind of a melodramatic verb, that I think this film lacks, really.
It does sound like your abiding memories of this will be along the same lines. It doesn't have as many stars, and it doesn't do the thing of quite giving them their moments in the same way. But the performances are what you've been talking about the whole way through.
Yes.
That's what you like about this.
Yes.
And that's what you value.
Yes. Though, I forget who the screenwriter was for Judgment at Nuremberg. It was a very famous screenwriter as well. You know, and I just think I remember Pauline Kael's review talking about how middlebrow it was, you know.
Abbey Man.
And I think the film had started off as a television show.
Which he wrote as well.
Yeah. But it's vastly superior, better structured, more cohesive than what we've just seen.
You just like Burt Lancaster.
I do like Burt Lancaster.
You like when he goes, ha, ha, ha.
And I like Marlene Dietrich. I like Burt Lancaster's energy.
Yeah.
You know, and I wish Rami Malek had more of that, you know.
What was the film we just saw, the documentary we saw about, I can't remember her name, who the filmmaker, Riefenstahl. We saw Riefenstahl, and you know, one of the big questions in that throughout was, did you know? And or the denial of knowledge, and how that was like the key kind of question in that film.
And the film proved that she knew.
Yeah.
So
but again, it's that question of did you know? That comes up here, that comes up in Judgment at Nuremberg. And,
Yeah.
Anyway,
thank you all very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and YouTube Music. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.